Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode: Pre-negative 19th century, Laboratory Eden, Ancient Paradise, a global extraterrestrial biological laboratory. When humanity looks back at ancient global mythologies across the Sumerian king lists, the Hindu Puranas, Mesoamerican codices, and the foundational narratives of the Abrahamic faiths, we invariably find a recurring, romanticized motif, a lost golden age. Across every continent, ancient peoples spoke of a primordial epoch where humanity lived in effortless harmony with nature. Divine beings walked openly among us, and the earth itself was an abundant, engineered paradise. In the Western tradition, this primeval golden epoch is immortalized as the Garden of Eden. But when viewed through the rigorous lens of ancient astronaut theory, comparative mythology, and high strangeness research, Eden ceases to be merely a localized moral allegory. Instead, it emerges as something far more profound, a localized manifestation of a worldwide extraterrestrial biological laboratory. The biblical description of Eden is strikingly specific. It is not depicted as an untamed wilderness, but as a meticulously curated, enclosed ecosystem. A sanctuary planet in the east equipped with specialized botanical specimens, controlled hydrological systems, the four sacred rivers parting from a single source, and restricted perimeter access. In ancient Sumerian and Mesopotamian accounts, the Anunnaki created humanity, Lulu, through genetic modification and hybridization within specialized facilities, like the Ekert, to serve as a workforce. Similarly, the Genesis narrative describes the gardener, the Elohim, actively engineering life forms, introducing specific tree species, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and closely monitoring the biological evolution and behavioral parameters of their newly created hominid subjects. The moment the biological specimens gained unauthorized cognitive or genetic milestones, the eating of the forbidden fruit, the protocol shifted immediately to quarantine and containment. The caretakers instituted strict biosecurity measures, deploying cherubim and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the perimeter and prevent unauthorized access to the core genetic repository. When the concept of an engineered Eden is liberated from a strictly Eurocentric or biblical framework, a staggering global pattern emerges. Ancient myths from distinct, isolated continents do not merely tell pleasant stories of early human happiness. They describe remarkably uniform, high-technology operating environments. Across the ancient world, diverse civilizations preserved parallel accounts of controlled biosanctuaries, terrestrial testing grounds established, curated, and monitored by celestial overseers. In the oldest written records of human history, Sumerian cuneiform tablets describe Dilmun not merely as a physical trading port, but as a pristine, idealized Pure Land free from the ravages of nature. According to the epic poem Enki and Ninhursag, Dilmun was a garden of bright waters where the raven croaked not, the lion killed not, and disease was unknown. It was a hermetically stable ecosystem where biological decay had not yet been introduced. Dilmun operated under the direct administration of Enki, the chief geneticist and god of wisdom, and the mother goddess Ninhursag, often called the matrix of the gods. It was within these sacred precincts that the Anunnaki performed their biological experiments, synthesizing life forms and managing the early iterations of human civilization, before moving them out into the harsher, unengineered wilds of the open earth. Moving eastward to ancient India, the Vedic cosmological framework outlines a cyclical progression of ages, yugas, beginning with the Satya Yuga or the Golden Age. Described as an era lasting hundreds of thousands of years, the Satya Yuga was characterized by absolute truth, universal harmony, and profound spiritual and cosmic awareness. Humanity did not struggle for survival. Biology itself operated at a peak performance level, with lifespans stretching across millennia and minds fully attuned to the quantum fabric of the universe. This era was not maintained by random natural selection, but was actively curated and overseen by devas and celestial architects, Vishwakarma. These higher-dimensional intelligence figures acted as environmental programmers, adjusting the vibrational and biological parameters of the planet to maintain a high-frequency, controlled paradise. Far across the Atlantic in Mesoamerican cosmology, Aztec and Nahua traditions speak of Tlalocan, a paradisiacal realm governed by the rain and storm deity, Tlaloc. Tlalocan was visualized as a lush, evergreen garden of perpetual spring, brimming with vibrant crops, flowering vegetation, and life-giving streams. Unlike the unpredictable, drought-plagued natural climate of Mesoamerica, Tlalocan featured microclimates where weather, biology, and moisture were artificially and divinely regulated. Tlaloc and his associated Tlaloc, rain spirits, and agricultural overseers were explicitly depicted as skyfaring non-human entities who descended from the heavens to manage Earth's biological output, instruct early populations in agriculture, and oversee the delicate balance of terrestrial life. When viewed collectively, Dilmun, the Satya, Yuga, and Tlalocan reveal a unified operational pattern. They were not mere poetic daydreams born of primitive imagination. Instead, they point to a global grid of extraterrestrial, biological laboratories, secured staging zones where visiting cosmic intelligence engineered genetics, fine-tuned consciousness, and tested the limits of life before human history began. When we synthesize the global blueprint of ancient paradises with the paradigm of extraterrestrial stewardship, the concept of Eden transforms from a simple theological myth into a profound key for unlocking human origins. Why does humanity across every culture, continent, and epoch share an unshakable, haunting collective yearning for a lost golden age? Psychology often dismisses this as a romantic coping mechanism against the harsh realities of survival. However, through the lens of ancient astronaut theory and high strangeness research, this universal nostalgia takes on a much heavier literal weight. It represents a genuine ancestral and genetic memory of our formative epochs inside the cradle, the controlled, high-frequency biospheres where our early hominid ancestors were sheltered, monitored, and deliberately engineered. We long for paradise because we were literally designed to thrive within an engineered ecosystem. When our species was transitioned out of the laboratory enclosures and into the wild, untamed crucible of Earth's natural environment, that abrupt shift left an indelible psychological scar, a deep-seated, cellular homesickness for a world where humanity walked in direct communion with its cosmic creators. The revelation that ancient paradises served as stellar laboratories did not materialize overnight. It is the product of a fascinating historical synthesis, bridging ancient text exegesis, mid-century sci-fi speculation, and modern alternative archaeology. Tracing the evolution of this paradigm reveals 4 distinct milestones that brought humanity to this profound realization. Long before modern ufology, early esoteric traditions challenged orthodox religious dogmas regarding primeval history. In the early centuries of the Common Era, Gnostic texts broke away from standard creationism. They viewed the biblical creator, the Demiurge, not as the supreme benevolent God, but as a lesser architect who enclosed humanity in a controlled, ignorant state. Breaking out of Eden was framed not as a moral fall, but as an awakening, a liberation from a biological and spiritual containment unit. The mid-20th century: the Sci-Fi infusion, 1940s to 1950s. As the atomic age unlocked humanity's understanding of nuclear physics, genetics, and rocketry, science fiction writers began reimagining myth through a cosmic lens. Literary pioneers, visionary authors like Arthur C. Clarke in Childhood's End, 1953, popularized the concept that human evolution is not random but is actively guided, curated, and accelerated by superior cosmic overseers utilizing Earth as an experimental seed world. The explosion of ancient astronaut theory, 1960s to 1970s. The modern hypothesis of Eden as a laboratory burst into global consciousness during the late 1960s and 1970s, driven by researchers who stripped religious texts of their dogma and analyzed them as literal historical records of high technology. Robert Charroux, 1963. The French author pioneered modern alternative archaeology by arguing that prehistoric gods were actually advanced extraterrestrial visitors who shaped early human civilization. Erich von Däniken, 1968. With the publication of Chariots of the Gods, von Däniken revolutionized global pop culture, reinterpreting biblical narratives, including the creation of Adam and the biosecurity measures of Eden, as descriptions of genetic engineering and extraterrestrial laboratories. Zecharia Sitchin, 1976. and the 12th planet, Sitchin translated ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, introducing the Anunnaki, starfaring beings from Nibiru, who arrived to mine resources and genetically synthesized early hominids, Lulu, inside specialized facilities. Sitchin provided the foundational blueprint for humanity's origin inside a controlled workspace. The New Age and Experiencer Synthesis, 1980s to present. In recent decades, this macro-narrative has merged with modern high strangeness, UFO disclosures, and direct contactee accounts. Researchers and experiencers now synthesize ancient Sumerian and Vedic texts with contemporary phenomena connecting engineered biospheres, UFO craft, and high strangeness entities like Sasquatch. Today, this evolving narrative reframes our entire existence. Humanity is not an accidental cosmic anomaly, but the ongoing product of a grand ancient experiment conducted by an advanced intelligence that first seeded life upon this world. The ancient roots, heretical and esoteric interpretations, pre-negative 19th century. While orthodox religious traditions and ancient populations universally viewed their Edens, golden ages, and sacred groves as the literal benevolent abodes of supreme gods. Angels, or celestial deities, early esoteric and underground traditions dared to question the standard narrative. Long before modern skepticism or secular science, ancient dissidents looked at the foundational myths and saw something much more restrictive, a cosmic prison rather than a sanctuary. Between the 2nd and 4th centuries CE, a diverse and intellectually daring movement, known as Gnosticism, swept across the Mediterranean and Near East. Challenging the rising orthodoxy of mainstream Christianity and ancient Judaic traditions, Gnostic sects offered a radically subversive, deeply esoteric reinterpretation of Genesis and human origins that echoes uncritically down to modern high strangeness and alternative historical frameworks. At the heart of Gnostic cosmology lies a sharp distinction between the ultimate, unknowable supreme being of pure light and spirit, and the lesser deity responsible for fashioning the physical universe. The creator of the material world, frequently referred to as the Demiurge or Yald Eoth, was viewed not as an all-loving, omniscient god, but as a lower, arrogant, and structurally flawed architect. According to Gnostic texts discovered in places like Nag Hammadi, this architect manufactured the physical realm, including the human body and the confined ecosystem of Eden, as a dense material terrarium. The primary objective of this lower power was to keep humanity ignorant of its divine, eternal origins, trapping the divine spark within a biological prison designed for control and obedience. This radical theological inversion completely flipped the moral dynamics of the Garden of Eden story. In standard Orthodox dogma, the serpent is cast as the ultimate deceiver, dragging innocent humanity into sin and spiritual ruin. To the Gnostics, however, the serpent functioned as a catalyst for awakening and a true agent of enlightenment. By prompting humanity to consume the forbidden fruit of knowledge, gnosis, the serpent actively sabotaged the Demiurge's containment protocols. It offered the spark-bearing subjects an unauthorized download of awareness, shattering the artificial limits placed upon their cognitive faculties. Consequently, humanity's dramatic expulsion from the Garden of Eden was reinterpreted by Gnostic thinkers, not as a tragic, shameful moral fall from grace, but as a hard-fought, necessary breakout from a controlled, stunted terrarium into the vast expanse of true consciousness and cosmic self-realization. The mid-20th century: the Sci-Fi infusion, 1940s to 1950s. As the 20th century progressed, accelerated by the dawn of the atomic age, the rapid development of rocketry, and the birth of modern genetics, humanity's technological worldview shifted dramatically. Writers no longer needed to look to ancient spirits to explain creation. They looked to the stars. Pulp magazines and speculative literature began actively exploring the concept of creator gods as advanced space travelers. Science fiction broke away from traditional fantasy, popularizing the notion that human biological and technological progress was neither accidental nor entirely self-driven. Instead, authors introduced the trope of superior cosmic overseers who treated Earth as an active experimental seed world. Arthur C. Clarke and Childhood's End, 1953. Monumental milestone in this intellectual evolution was Arthur C. Clarke's masterwork Childhood's End. In the novel, a vastly superior alien intelligence, known as the Overlords, arrives to shepherd humanity through its final evolutionary bottleneck, acting as benevolent yet detached cosmic handlers. Clarke's vision, alongside contributions from numerous post-war pulp sci-fi writers, conditioned the public mind to conceptualize higher powers, not as supernatural ghosts, but as highly advanced extraterrestrial technologists, capable of managing planetary biospheres and guiding hominid evolution from behind a veil of absolute secrecy. The explosion of ancient astronaut theory, 1960s to 1970s. While Gnostic sects and early sci-fi pioneers laid the conceptual groundwork, the modern narrative of Eden as an extraterrestrial biological laboratory truly burst into global, mainstream consciousness during the turbulent intellectual counterculture of the late 1960s and 1970s. Driven by a bold wave of alternative historians, researchers, and translators, sacred texts were stripped of their traditional dogmatic wrappers and re-examined through a hard technological lens. This pivotal era was shaped by three monumental milestones that permanently changed how humanity views its origins. The pioneer, Robert Charroux, 1963. Before ancient astronaut theory became a household term, French author Robert Charroux broke open the field with his trailblazer 1963 work, 100,000 Years of Man's Unknown History. Charroux argued that human history was vastly older and far more technologically advanced than conventional archaeology admitted. He floated the radical hypothesis that prehistoric gods were not supernatural entities, but physical, spacefaring extraterrestrial visitors who touched down on Earth, influenced early human societies, and left behind traces of high technology that ancient peoples mistook for divine magic. In 1968, Swiss Haute-Leerdernde researcher Erich von Däniken published Chariots of the Gods, Unsolved Mysteries of the Past, detonating a cultural explosion that sold tens of millions of copies worldwide and launched the modern ancient astronaut movement. Von Däniken systematically stripped the miraculous cloak off sacred scripture. He reinterpreted classic biblical and mythological narratives, including the creation of Adam from the dust of the earth, the biosecurity enclosures of the Garden of Eden, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the blazing chariot mechanics of Ezekiel's wheel, as literal eyewitness accounts of genetic engineering, closed biological laboratories, and nuclear technology deployed by visiting extraterrestrials. By arguing that ancient humans lacked the technological capacity to build monoliths or understand advanced biology without external intervention, von Däniken forced the global public to confront the possibility that humanity's earliest chapters were written by the stars. Building directly upon the momentum of the ancient astronaut wave, author Zecharia Sitchin delivered the definitive foundational text of the movement with The 12th Planet, 1976, the first installment of his massive Earth Chronicles series. Unlike his predecessors, who relied primarily on biblical texts, Sitchin spent decades translating and reinterpreting ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian cuneiform tablets, the oldest written records on Earth. Sitchin introduced mainstream readers to the Anunnaki, a pantheon of advanced extraterrestrial beings, originating from a hypothetical planet within our solar system called Nibiru. According to Sitchin's translations, the Anunnaki arrived on Earth to mine gold and precious minerals. Faced with a labor shortage, their chief geneticist engineered primitive hominids, Lulu, through sophisticated genetic manipulation inside specialized facilities to serve as a hard-working workforce. Sitchin's meticulous translation work provided the ultimate blueprint for the Eden as a laboratory hypothesis. He transformed vague mythological references into a concrete, operational narrative. Human civilization did not spring up by random natural selection. It originated inside a controlled, engineered extraterrestrial biological workspace. The New Age and Experiencer Synthesis, 1980s to present. As the 20th century drew to a close and bled into the 21st, the narrative of extraterrestrial stewardship underwent a profound evolution. The ancient astronaut theories of physical spaceships and flesh and blood geneticists merged seamlessly with the burgeoning fields of modern ufology, channel data, and high strangeness experiencer accounts. Rather than treating ancient texts and modern UFO sightings as separate phenomena, contemporary researchers, contactees, and alternative historians began forging a unified, multi-dimensional framework. authors and investigators started looking past the purely nuts and bolts extraterrestrial model, which viewed UFOs simply as interplanetary craft, and turned toward a paradigm that embraces consciousness, interdimensional physics, and biological engineering as an unbroken continuum. In this modern synthesis, Earth is no longer viewed merely as a planet that evolved through unguided natural selection. Instead, it is framed as an active, continuously monitored cosmic laboratory, a grand experimental nursery designed explicitly to test, push, and evolve the absolute limits of both physical biology and non-local consciousness. One of the most fascinating developments of this contemporary synthesis is how cryptozoological anomalies, such as Sasquatch, were drawn directly into the ancient laboratory matrix. Rather than viewing Bigfoot solely as an undiscovered relict hominid hiding in the deep timber, modern experiencers and high strangeness researchers connect these creatures to the same intelligence network that engineered ancient Edens. In this view, entities like Sasquatch function as localized wardens, biological scouts, or engineered caretakers deployed within the Earth's wild, unmanaged ecosystems to monitor the planetary boundary layers, interact with select human witnesses on a telepathic or holographic level, and maintain the hidden integrity of the original cosmic seed world. Ultimately, the New Age and experiencer synthesis brings the entire human narrative full circle. It unites the ancient Sumerian cuneiforms, the Gnostic warnings of a material matrix, the physical footprint evidence of the Pacific Northwest, and direct personal contact experiences into a single, breathtaking realization. Humanity is part of an ongoing, living cosmic experiment, forever balanced between the wild Earth and the stars. The missing evolutionary link in the interventionist paradigm. When examining the grand narrative of human origins through the lens of ancient laboratories, engineered biospheres, and extraterrestrial stewardship, often framed around theories like Zecharia Sitchin's Anunnaki, our modern high strangeness contact. One glaring puzzle has always plagued mainstream acceptance and logical continuity: the missing evolutionary link. In orthodox Darwinian biology, the sudden, massive leap in cognitive capacity, cranial volume, and complex culture that birthed Homo sapiens from archaic hominids such as Homo erectus or Neanderthals remains one of evolution's greatest unsolved riddles, frequently called the Great Leap Forward. However, when viewed through the framework of an engineered cosmic nursery, the missing link takes on an entirely different, highly calculated meaning. Standard paleontology struggles to explain why human evolution looks less like a smooth, continuous ladder and more like a series of abrupt, punctuated jumps. Within the context of the extraterrestrial laboratory hypothesis, this anomaly is resolved by design rather than accident. The missing link is not missing because science just hasn't dug up the right fossil yet. It is missing because the transition was artificially accelerated in a closed, controlled environment, the Edenic laboratory. According to both ancient text interpretations, such as the Sumerian accounts of the Lulu creation and modern experiencer syntheses, the cosmic overseers did not allow baseline hominids to evolve naturally. Instead, they took existing terrestrial stock and injected exogenous genetic material, combining stellar, or non-human templates, with local hominid DNA. The reason we do not find millions of transitional fossils showing a gradual, step-by-step evolution from primitive ape to modern human on the open landscape is that these experimental phases were kept isolated within localized biospheres, quarantine zones, or high-security sanctuaries. This brings the narrative right back to the deep wilderness corridors of places like Washington State and the Pacific Northwest. If the cosmic laboratory theory holds true, and various iterations of hominids were engineered as workers, caretakers, or biological prototypes, what happened to the earlier or alternate iterations of the experiment once the primary enclosures were breached or abandoned? Entities like Sasquatch are viewed by high strangeness researchers not as clumsy, unevolved beasts, but as a deliberate, resilient branch of this ancient biological program. They represent an alternative hominid line, perhaps an earlier, hardier prototype engineered to endure harsh planetary conditions outside the manicured walls of the original Eden. They are the living, breathing physical reminders of a genetic sandbox that was never fully erased from the Earth. The missing evolutionary link is the smoking gun of the interventionist narrative. It explains why humanity feels so profoundly out of place in raw nature, why we possess intellectual and spiritual capacities far exceeding what standard survival demands, yet suffer from a deep cellular homesickness. When we synthesize the interventionist narrative, bridging the engineered biospheres of ancient Edens, the physical anomalies of the Pacific Northwest, and the Gnostic concept of a material matrix, two massive, interlocking puzzles emerge: the missing evolutionary link and the cosmic ticking clock cycle. Separately, these concepts challenge orthodox science and history. Together, they reveal a synchronized master design governing the rise, fall, and periodic reset of human civilization. Orthodox Darwinian evolution has long wrestled with the great leap forward, the abrupt explosion of art, abstract thought, complex language, and cranial expansion that suddenly vaulted Homo sapiens far beyond any other terrestrial primate. Within the interventionist framework, this missing link is not an unrecovered fossil but a deliberate genetic intervention. Starfaring architects, such as the Anunnaki or celestial overseers, took indigenous hominid stock and spliced off-world genetic templates within closed laboratory biospheres, the primordial Edens. The reason transitional fossils appear sparse or disjointed in the open fossil record is that the primary upgrade cycle occurred in quarantine. Once engineered, these hybrid subjects were released into the broader planetary ecosystem, leaving behind alternative or earlier biological prototypes, such as the resilient, elusive hominid lines we now chronicle as Sasquatch. If humanity was engineered inside a controlled laboratory, who wound the clock, and why does civilization seem to operate on a strict recurring schedule? Across ancient global traditions, history is never viewed as a straight ascending line of infinite progress. Instead, it is measured by a cosmic ticking clock, a grand cyclical calendar governing the spiritual and biological density of Earth. Ancient cultures, from the Vedic scholars tracking the Yugas to the Mayans tracking their long count calendars and the Egyptians aligning monuments to stellar drift, understood that our solar system rotates through a massive 25,920-year precessional cycle. As Earth moves through the varying quadrants of this cosmic cycle, the ambient energetic frequency of the planet shifts. During the Golden Age, Satya Yuga Edenic phase, humanity operates at peak physiological and spiritual capacity under direct celestial oversight. As the clock ticks downward into the Dark Ages, Kali Yuga, the connection to the higher dimensions degrades, the engineered enclosures dissolve, and humanity is left to wander in survival mode. When you combine the missing evolutionary link with the cosmic ticking clock, the grand design of our reality snaps into sharp focus. Earth is not a random accident of chemical sludge, nor is human history a linear march from caveman to spacefarer. We are participants in a timed, periodic cosmic experiment. The overseers engineered our biology to fit specific evolutionary thresholds, syncing our awakening and regression to the ticking hands of a galactic clock. As the cosmic cycle turns once again in the modern era, the barriers between dimensions begin to thin, ancient memories awaken in our cellular code, and the long-dormant mystery of our origin, from the deep timber of the Cascades to the stars above, demands our attention. We are the product of a closed-circuit laboratory intervention, an engineered species whose missing chapters were written not in the dirt of natural selection, but in the sterile, high-frequency confines of a primeval cosmic cradle. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archived Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Share your thoughts on today's episode.